Okay, so you know how those inauguration outfits can kind of end up being the talk of the town?
Yeah.
Sometimes for reasons that have nothing to do with politics. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Well, we are doing a deep dive today on this fashion blog post that breaks down some of the most controversial and talked about looks from the 2025 Trump inauguration.
Fun.
It's a really interesting one, especially the outfits that left people kind of scratching their heads.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, how fashion can be this powerful communication tool.
Absolutely, especially on a big stage like an inauguration,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just looking good. It's about sending a message.
Right.
Intentional or not?
Intentional or not, exactly. In this blog we're looking at, it really gets into what those messages might be.
Oh, cool.
So my first question for you is can fashion choices really be that important in a setting like a political setting?
I mean, I think they absolutely can. Every little detail, the color, the cut, even the designer can be scrutinized and, interpreted and analyzed, and it all adds up to this visual language that says a lot about the person wearing it.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because you think about back in 2017, Melania Trump wore that powder blue Ralph Lauren outfit. Everybody loved it.
Yeah.
Cut to 2025, and she's wearing a navy blue coat
Yeah.
and this wide brim hat. And some people thought it was chic, but others were this is a little too somber for this.
Somber, yeah, I mean, especially that hat, right? That got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
People were comparing it to the McDonald's Hamburglar, even Michael Jackson, which is interesting.
Wow.
But I think, it could be interpreted as this deliberate shift toward humility.
Yeah.
Maybe after years of people criticizing her for high fashion choices, she decided to tone it down.
Right.
She's
She's responding to that.
Yeah.
Which makes you think about the pressure on these public figures to find that balance
Totally.
between what they like and what they think they should wear.
Right.
Okay, so now on a completely different side of the spectrum, we have John Fetterman,
Oh, yeah.
the senator from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And, everybody's dressed to the nines,
Right.
but he shows up in a black hoodie gym, shorts and sneakers.
It's true. It sparked a lot of debate, about decorum.
Yeah.
Was it disrespectful or authentically him?
Yeah.
And, I think it really speaks to this larger trend that we're seeing, not just in politics, but in society as a whole, right?
Yeah.
This rejection of traditional power dressing.
Yeah, it challenges the idea that you need to wear a suit to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Some people thought it was great. They loved it, a breath of fresh air.
Right,
Other
yeah.
people are this is completely inappropriate.
Completely.
And it raises this question of is there even a place for this formality anymore in modern politics?
Right.
Are we moving towards this more relaxed,
Yeah.
be yourself approach? And if so, where's the line?
Where's the line exactly?
Okay. So then we have Lauren Sanchez,
Oh.
Jeff Bezos' fiance. She shows up in a white Alexander McQueen blazer, which on paper sounds pretty normal,
Right.
but it seems that she styled it as a dress
Okay.
with what looked like lace lingerie underneath.
Oh, wow. And get this, it turns out she had worn the same outfit on a date night in New York City.
So she's repurposing a date night look for a presidential inauguration.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the conversations in the fashion world about this.
I know.
This really pushes the boundaries of what people consider appropriate,
Yeah.
especially for women in the public eye.
Yeah, I mean, this situation really highlights the double standard that women face when it comes to fashion.
Yeah.
There's all this pressure to be stylish, but not too provocative, fashionable, but not too trendy.
Right.
It's a really tough line to walk,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's there's this whole rule book for women in the public eye, especially in politics.
All right.
And Lauren Sanchez, she just kind of ripped a few pages out of that book.
Yeah, she did. But it makes you wonder if those rules need updating.
Yeah.
Times are changing. And our idea of what's appropriate changes too.
I think that's a really important point because fashion is always evolving, right?
Right.
And something that might have been scandalous a few decades ago could be totally fine today.
Right.
It's a reflection of our changing values.
Okay. So we've talked about how these outfits can be controversial, and push those boundaries of what's appropriate.
Yeah.
But let's get into the messages these fashion choices could be sending. Are they really that calculated?
I think it's a mix,
Yeah.
You have conscious decisions, but also sometimes it's subconscious.
Yep.
Sometimes a politician will choose something specific to project an image or to connect with a certain audience.
Right.
But other times it's just more intuitive, just their personal style or even their mood that day.
Right.
But either way, people are going to analyze and interpret it, whether the politician realizes it or not.
This is kind of like a fashion Rorschach test.
Yeah.
Where everyone sees something different.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting. Like,
Yeah.
you could have a politician wearing something bold and colorful.
Right.
Some people see that as confident and assertive.
Right.
Others might think they're attention-seeking or even frivolous.
Oh, yeah.
It all depends on the person looking at it.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's say a politician wants to send a specific message with their clothes. How do they do that?
Well, one way is through symbolism,
Right.
like the American flag pin a lot of politicians wear.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really easy way to say you're patriotic.
Right.
Or even think about a designer from a specific state or region.
Right.
That could be a way to show support for local businesses, or to connect with voters in that area.
It's like saying, I'm one of you,
Exactly.
without saying it.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about the actual clothes, the style, the cut? Does that send a message
Look,
to?
for sure.
Yeah.
Like, think about the difference between a tailored suit and a flowy bohemian dress.
Okay.
The suit says authority, professional. The dress is more approachable, down to earth.
Interesting.
And then there's color,
Right.
red and blue.
Right.
Those are often linked to parties.
Of course.
And then green, maybe that represents environmentalism or sustainability.
That whole visual code.
Yeah, and we're all like subconsciously decoding it.
Right.
And just like any code, it can be like manipulated.
Right.
Think about the power suit for women in the 80s.
Yeah.
That was challenging gender roles and saying, hey, we're here.
They're a force.
Exactly. Or now you have politicians, especially younger ones, wearing more casual clothes, streetwear.
It's true.
And that's them connecting with younger voters, saying, we're relatable.
They get it.
We're not stuck in the old ways.
Yeah, it's almost like fashion is a battleground for different values.
In a way, it is. And that's why it's so important to be aware of what we're saying with our clothes,
Right.
both intentionally and not, because those choices really affect how we're seen and how people receive our message.
Okay, speaking of impact, we can't forget the money side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Remember Nancy Reagan's gown? That was like $10,000.
Oh, yeah, that caused a lot of controversy.
Yeah, because people saw it as out of touch, especially during those times.
That's a perfect example of how fashion can get mixed up with economics.
Yeah.
The designer, the materials, it all says something about the politician.
So if they wear something from a local artisan or something sustainable, that's them supporting those things.
Absolutely. It's a way to put your money where your mouth is,
It's your values.
Yeah, show your values, exactly. But then on the other hand, wearing something super expensive from some big name designer that can seem elitist.
Right. Especially if the country's struggling.
Especially the country struggling,
Yeah.
exactly. It's all about context.
So every thread has a story.
Every thread has a story, and that story can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Think about that Made in America movement.
Right.
When politicians wear clothes made in America, it helps those brands.
Right.
It supports those workers.
It creates jobs.
It can even create jobs. That's like fashion diplomacy.
It really is.
It's using fashion to help the economy promote culture, even create social change.
It's powerful.
It is, and that's why politicians have to be so careful about where their clothes come from
Yeah.
and what impact their choices have on different industries.
Right. But it's not just where they're made, but who's making them.
That's right. The fashion industry has a history of exploiting workers.
Yeah. Especially overseas.
Especially overseas. So supporting brands that treat workers fairly and pay them a living wage, that sends a strong message
About their values.
about their values, about social justice,
Right. It's like wearing your values on your sleeve, literally.
Literally. But does all this focus on economics take away from the art of it all?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Right, because fashion is about self-expression. It's about beauty and craftsmanship.
Yeah.
But I think you can appreciate both sides.
Right.
You can think about the beauty and also acknowledge the social and economic impacts.
It's about balance.
Finding that balance,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's like admiring a painting, but also understanding the history behind it.
Exactly, you get a richer experience that way.
Exactly. And that's what makes fashion so interesting.
It's so multi-layered.
Yeah.
It shows our values, our dreams, where we fit in the world.
Well, so we talked about the symbolism, the economics, the cultural side of things. But there's one thing we haven't really touched on.
What's that?
Gender.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like women in politics get judged way more for their clothes.
It's true. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah. Men can just wear a suit and tie.
Right.
But women are judged on everything. The skirt length, the lipstick color.
It's because of sexism, it's still so ingrained in our society.
Yeah, it's like they have to be perfectly polished and stylish,
Right.
but also relatable and authentic.
Right.
That's an impossible standard.
It really is, and it creates this double standard where women are criticized no matter what they do.
Yeah, too fashionable, not fashionable enough.
Remember all the talk about Hillary Clinton's pantsuits?
Oh, yeah.
Some loved them, some hated them.
Right. But people were always talking about her clothes way more than they talked about the men's clothes.
It's like what they wear is a reflection of their competence, even their character.
Right.
But for men, it's just clothes.
Exactly. It's this subtle way to undermine women and keep them down.
That's really frustrating.
It is, and it makes people think women's looks are more important than their ideas.
That's a distraction.
It's a distraction from the real issues.
So what can we do to change this? How do we get to a place where fashion in politics is more fair and less judgmental, especially for women?
I think awareness is key.
Okay.
We need to recognize that double standard and the sexism behind it.
Yeah.
And then we can start to challenge it.
Right.
It's not just calling out the obvious sexism.
Right.
It's also about being careful about the language we use and how we act.
So instead of commenting on what a woman's wearing, we should focus on her policies.
Exactly. Let's talk about substance, not just looks.
Her qualifications.
Exactly. And it's not just what we say, but how we say it.
Let's not use language that puts women in boxes or treats them like objects.
It's about respect.
It's about respect, treating women in politics with the same seriousness that we treat men.
Right.
And that means recognizing that their fashion choices are just that, choices.
Yeah.
They have the right to express themselves just like anyone else without being judged so harshly.
It's about giving them the power to own their style.
Exactly, without being punished for it.
Exactly. And when we do that, we create a political space that's more inclusive and fair, where everyone can be themselves.
Exactly.
Wow, it's amazing how much there is to talk about with clothes.
Right.
Like, who knew that inaugural fashion could be so interesting?
It's like this perfect blend of politics, culture, and self-expression.
Yeah, and it's always changing too, just like society.
Exactly.
So looking ahead, what do you think the future holds for inauguration outfits?
That's a good question.
Will we go back to those more classic styles, or will people keep pushing the boundaries, using fashion to make a statement?
I think we'll probably see even more of a mix. That line between personal style and political messaging will get blurrier.
Right.
Especially as younger generations come into politics, they're so much more comfortable expressing themselves through clothes.
That's a really good point. So we might see more eco-friendly choices.
Yeah.
Maybe more diversity and representation.
Right.
Or what if we see a move towards more like gender-neutral looks?
Interesting.
Like, imagine the next inauguration and everyone's empowered jumpsuits instead of pantsuits.
I love that.
It would be a statement, for sure.
But seriously, I think it all comes back to remembering that fashion is a way to communicate.
Language.
It is, and just like any language, it's all about what you're trying to say.
So when we see someone up there on that stage, we shouldn't just be looking at the clothes, but trying to figure out what they mean.
Exactly. What are they trying to tell us about themselves, about what they believe in, about their hopes for the future?
Yeah, it's like they're saying, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. But instead of words, they're using fabric and thread.
And that's why we should all think about what our own clothes are saying.
That's true.
Because whether we realize it or not, we're always communicating something with what we wear.
So next time you get dressed, think about the message you're sending out into the world.
What story are you trying to tell?
Because it could be an inauguration gown, or just your everyday jeans and t-shirt clothes have power.
They really do. They can change how people see us. They can change opinions. They can even inspire real change.
That's amazing. So as we wrap up this deep dive on inaugural fashion, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I think the big takeaway is that fashion goes beyond just the clothes themselves.
It's about the people.
It's about the people, the stories they're telling, the impact they have on the world.
It's about understanding that fashion is a way to communicate, to express ourselves, to show who we are.
Yeah, it's a reflection of us both as individuals and as a society.
So next time you see a picture of an inaugural outfit, or any outfit, really think about the story behind it.
Yeah, who made it? What were they trying to say? And what does it tell us about ourselves and the world around us?
Those are great questions. We'd love to hear your thoughts too. So head over to our social media and share what you think about fashion and politics. And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.